Today on the Animorphs YouTube channel, we are going to do another book review, but it's a bit different this time because it's heckin' Christmas. And who doesn't love Christmas? And there are, well, let's be honest, there are no Animorphs Christmas books. It's probably the least Christmassy book series ever written. Let's be perfectly honest. You can't really picture a scene where Christmas would become relevant. But somebody on fanfiction.net made Animorphs Christmassy. Sarah1281 in 2011 created an Animorphs Christmas Carol. And as a special for this Christmas, I want to return to the old style of my videos where I did the book reviews and I just stood in front of the camera and yelled a little bit, okay? It's going to be a bit different though because obviously it's a fan fiction. Sarah wasn't paid to do this, I'm assuming, and it's just a bit of fun on the side, so obviously I'm going to be, well, good-spirited about this. Whereas, for example, some of the books in the main series, I felt fully justified in besmirching them somewhat. Book 37, cough, cough. But yeah, this was a fascinating little read. I really enjoyed it. But if you haven't read it yet, then you might want to go read it because there are going to be spoilers in this video, and I'd rather you it's only short, so go read it now. I'm going to give you 5 seconds to go read this and then come back and we'll get into the spoilerific stuff, okay? So have a 5-second picture of a wheelbarrow in a top hat. Topical, innit? Wheelbarrow in a top hat. Oh, you're back. Right, let's move on to the story. The fan fiction, an Animorphs Christmas Carol. Christmas time. Mistletoe. Copyright strike. Right, okay, that's not very good, is it? Right, so Animorphs Christmas Carol goes very much in the same way as the original Christmas Carol, which of course was written by Mrs. Claus. A Christmas Carol was written by Oscar Wilde. Okay, so A Christmas Carol is a story about a guy called Scrooge, who's a bit of a grumpy old git, a bit like my cat Tiggles. And the ghosts of Christmas past, present and future come in, say, how do you do? Sod. He wakes up Christmas morning and says, right, have turkey for everyone. Okay, it's a great story. I do recommend it. And this is nicely translated into an Animorphs story. So let's get into it, right? So we're with Jake. He's the narrator through all of this. It's only 4 chapters. So the first chapter covers the lead up to it. Okay, so he's with his parents and Marco comes up to him and says, come round my place for Christmas, because obviously it's Christmas time. But Jake's a bit standoffish. He'd be like, not really up to it. This takes place, by the way, just so you know. You remember how disjointed my book reviews were? Well, it's going to be the same here, because it's all freaking ad-lib, isn't it? This takes place roughly a year after the Yerk War comes to an end. And it actually takes place explicitly before Visser 3 or Esplin 9466, before his court trial. We get that bit in the books, remember. So a year after the war, that trial takes place. This takes place, obviously, the Christmas just before that trial. Okay, so that's the context there. Jake still lives with his parents. Marco has just bought his mansion with his butler Weatherby. One of the reasons I love this story, by the way, is because of when it takes place. I love this little bit. Firstly, I love book 54, the beginning, but I love all this story building, this scene setting after the war takes place. I just love what it introduces, and this Sarah 1281 has obviously read book 54 prior to doing this, so she's got all the little details, and I love what she puts in there, okay? But we've got that. So Marco's in his mansion, Cassie is off somewhere in California at this point. She hasn't yet gone to Wyoming, where we assume she goes because she works in Yellowstone. Tobias is still somewhere, and Rachel, we assume, is still dead, right? off in space somewhere. Tom, of course, is dead, and he is one of the main focal points for this little fan fiction. So he has died, the parents and Jake are still grieving, okay? And it's affecting Jake quite a lot, to the point where he's distancing himself from everyone around him. But he doesn't really seem to pay much notice of that. He is a bit like the Scrooge figure, where he's just sort of on his own, bah humbug. Not to the same extent. And one of the things I will say about this fan fiction, I mean, I love Jake as a character. He is my favourite character. But I do think it might have worked even better if it was Tobias being the Scrooge figure. I think that could have worked really well as well. Not to say that the version with Jake isn't good, because this is good. But I think Tobias is more of a Scrooge than Jake is at this point. Jake goes to bed having basically shrugged Marco off, said, "Nah, I'm not going to spend Christmas with you and your parents, you smell a bit." And don't interrupt my videos by laughing, woman. Okay. Right, chapter 2 comes along. And, oh no, we're still in chapter 1. We're still in chapter 1. Bang! Shut up, Adam, you know nothing. Jake's in his room and he suddenly sees a familiar face that he hasn't seen for approximately a year. And it's Tom. The dead ghost Tom. If you get my drift. And Jake, throughout this book, is initially of the thought of, oh, it must be the Chi doing this. And progressively, he becomes more convinced that the Chi aren't actually involved. But yeah, he's like, wait, you must be a Chi illusion, or somebody's morphed you or some shit, because this ain't freaking right, man. You can't just come barging in here, especially on Christmas Eve when I want to get my kip, because else Santa won't come down that freaking chimney and give me my goddamn presents! Cock! And so Tom ignores Jake's incoherent rambling and basically says to him, "Why are you wallowing over me being dead? Because let's face it, I'm dead, I don't care. You just crack on with your life, you know, you feel guilty, obviously." And I will say, there is a lot of Jake's remorse going into this fanfiction, a lot of his guilt, and it's worked really quite well. Reminder that we never actually got to hear Tom speak in the series, so if you're just reading this fanfiction after reading the series, it's your first time you're hearing from him. And he's saying, look, you did what you had to do. Yeah, I'm not exactly ecstatic about being killed, but come on. I mean, come on. Come on. But Jake doesn't really buy it. He doesn't really go along with it. So Tom says, right, you've become a bit of a grumpy goo this last year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get these guys over here to give you a bit of a haunting, yeah? And Jake actually says to him, what, like in A Christmas Carol? And Tom's like, yeah, like in A Christmas Carol. One thing I will say about this book is it's a bit inconsistent with that structure. So on the one hand, Jake is saying, oh, I know A Christmas Carol. It's that one with Scrooge and the ghosts and everything. And then there are some bits where he's surprised by what's going on. And you think, why are you surprised? Like later on when he goes into the graveyard, he looks around like, what the fuck is all this? And you think, have you not seen the freaking movies? Oscar Wilde spent hours writing this stuff for you, and you don't even remember it. How goddamn inconsiderate. So chapter 2 starts, and I was actually quite surprised with who Sarah put as the first ghost, the ghost of Christmas Past, but really I shouldn't have been. It's Grandpa G. Who remembers Grandpa G? He was awesome in book 31. He wasn't around much, but he was very impactful. He was the guy with the dagger in the little box that he kept hidden with all his medals. And he has a talk with Jake about all that, because Jake does the same thing. He's got that footlocker with all his medals hidden away, much like Grandpa G did. Because he's essentially ashamed of them. He's a war criminal, and he did all these horrible things, and he beats himself up about it. He got Tom killed, he got Rachel killed, and Grandpa G basically puts an arm over his shoulder and says, look, shut the fuck up, you little brat, and get on with it. As grandparents do. Grandpa G takes Jake back in time to when he was 9 years old, and he was sitting with his parents and Tom, who we assume is still free at this point. We can be pretty sure he's not yerked at this point. They're sitting around the dinner table talking about Christmas, and Jake gets all excited saying, right, I've had my dinner now. I want to feed Rudolph and Santa and all that sort of stuff. Can we do the cookies and milk thing now? And one thing I will say is that Steve, Jake's dad, is a bit of a dick in this fan fiction. He's like, there's no Santa Claus, bar humbug. And if you give him milk, you're a pussy. Stuff like that. That's generally what it feels like at times. I don't celebrate Christmas. Bah, I don't believe in all that Jesus mumbo jumbo. Yeah, I'll still celebrate Christmas, but that's basically what he comes across as in this fan fiction. And it gets worse actually. But it's quite jarring how much of a dick Steve is in this story. But yeah, they're talking about that. And one of the things that I did think about when reading this, Jake and Rachel, what are their religions?
Are they Jewish?
They're Jewish. Why are they celebrating Christmas? But then maybe they're just like, I'm ancestrally Jewish on my dad's side, aren't I? We found that out recently. I celebrate Christmas just because my family technically are part Jewish. I celebrate Christmas. So maybe it's like that. So I can forgive it for that. So apparently they're ancestrally Jewish and they still celebrate Crimbo because let's face it, the Christian holidays are better than the Jewish ones. Am I going to get cancelled for that? I mean, what do the Jews have? A dreidel? Boring. We've got frickin' Christmas trees.
They've got the candelabra thing, the menorah.
Oh, the candle thing.
Yeah.
How does that compare to a Christmas tree?
They have dreidels.
I'd mention the dreidels. But they've got that funny bread as well.
Don't they get like 13 presents or something?
13 presents?
They get a present every day they light the candle.
I should really take more advantage of my Jewish heritage.
Yeah.
I could get 13 presents this year. Bang! Get in there, son. Anyway, where were we? Oh yeah, having been cancelled, let's get back into the video. Oh, it's 2-0 to Argentina, my dear. I'm filming this during the football, by the way. I hope you're freaking happy. I took time out of the football to talk to you lot. It was a messy penalty, by the way. Think you should clean it up. My jokes are wasted on you. But anyway, yeah, so we're talking about Jake being around the table with Tom and the family and all that. And there's this little bit where Jake's thinking about something that happened or talking to Grandpa G about a story where at this point Jake believes in Santa, but Tom found out that Santa didn't exist. And there's all this little bit about the innocence of believing or not believing in Santa. And there's a bit where it's revealed that Tom found out that Santa wasn't real because he came downstairs at night when his parents were putting the presents under the tree. And then Steve gives him a bollocking, right? You see what I mean by him being a dick? How dare you come downstairs at this time? Shoos him off to bed. And then not only that, he comes up to bed, comes in through the door.
You'll never have Christmas again.
This freaking dick move. You can't do that to a kid. If you told me Christmas would never happen again, what is it the Jews celebrate? Hanukkah. I'll say, right then, I'm just going to go do some Hanukkah. Kwanzaa. Which is the Christmassy one? Is it the bar mitzvah?
No.
What's a bar mitzvah?
I think they're coming of age for Jews.
Have I come of age?
No.
No. So my bar mitzvah is still to come. Cool. Okay.
You generally get a large gift on it too from your parents.
Oh, freaking. Right, I'm going to call my mum.
Hello?
Mum,
Yeah?
where are you?
I'm out in Royal William with my friends.
Oh. When's my bar mitzvah?
When's your what?
When's my bar mitzvah?
When's your bar mitzvah?
Yeah.
What?
When's my bar mitzvah?
I don't know, it sounds like you're saying bar mitzvah.
Yeah, when's my bar mitzvah?
I've no idea, Adam. I don't know what you're talking about.
Some Jew you are. We then go to the barn with Grandpa G during a Christmas during the war. And Jake comments on, this is one of the happiest Christmases I had, despite the fact that the war was going on. And why was it? Well, you just watched the general banter of the Animorphs crew within the barn talking about Christmas. And I got to say, Sarah nails this scene. Nails the characters, certainly, but also the humour going on, because Axe is being his typical clueless self. So they're talking about, oh, Jake still believed in Santa until last year. And Jake says, nuh-uh. And they talk about that, and Axe is just in the background and say, who the fuck is this Santa? Is it, are you being... What's the logistics of him freaking flying around the world doing that? And Cassie just justifies it, and Axe is just thrown into a spinning ball of confused rage over this. But it was brilliantly written. But it's this idea of innocence and Jake coming into the war and how that innocence was vanishing and what have you. That's the gist of it I got anyway. It did confuse me a bit, this chapter at points. But yeah, I thought that was really well done. And then you got the last bit where Cassie and Jake are talking, looking up at the stars and said Axe lives there somewhere and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, really nice little scene. And that's where Grandpa G says, right, back to bed. And someone else is going to come see you now. So we get that. So next chapter comes along and whack, Jake gets hit on the head with a pillow. And it turns out it's Rachel. She's the ghost of Christmas present. And she basically kicks off at Jake for the first half of this chapter saying, stop fucking bawling your eyes out and go do your homework or something. To which Jake is still a bit like, oh, I got you freaking killed. And he keeps saying, I'm sorry, because he doesn't know what else to say throughout most of this. And Rachel just increasingly gets annoyed at this, and yeah, it's quite amusing. I enjoyed it. Because she's the ghost of Christmas present, she takes Jake around to where the other Animorphs are at the time and shows him the effect that he's having on these people, with him not being, you know, not freaking smiling. God damn it, Jake, put a smile on at least. But Marco's in his house with his parents. They're saying, is Jake going to come? He says, I don't think he is. And they're just a bit down about it. And then same with Cassie, because she's with her parents and they're doing stuff. And the parents ask about Rachel. And Cassie has a bit of a chat and they ask, oh, what about Jake? And she's a bit like, She's a bit more... she doesn't want to talk so much about Jake. And Jake sees that his absence or his lack of openness is affecting these two in a negative way, effectively. And then he goes with Rachel to see his parents, and at first he thinks, oh, are they getting divorced because they can't stand the whole memory of Tom thing and they can't make it work? But it turns out that they want Jake to get therapy here and now while Jake's having this thing. His parents he's fucked. We need to get a new unit. Either that or put him in therapy. And they suspect him of having PTSD. And he's there like, but I'm just being normal. I'm not, there's nothing wrong with me. And Rachel says, well, why are they saying that then, you twat? Freaking grow a pair. Tit. And that's where basically we leave Jake into the hands of the Ghost of Christmas Future, which is the main bit where I'm thinking, hold on, this doesn't make sense, because he looks around at this graveyard and says, oh, who could have foreseen this scenario? And then he sees the Grim Reaper-like sod with the hood, and he's like, I wonder what you're supposed to be and who you are. Yeah, you know what A Christmas Carol is, Jake, so you know who that guy is, okay? Don't give me that bullshit. God damn it. But this is my favourite part of it all, because he sees a grave and he thinks initially, oh, we're only 2 years in the future, judging by how Cassie looks or what have you. And there's my grave. Oh no, I'm dead. Oh wait, actually no, I'm not. Why are we in a graveyard? I don't freaking know. But I'll tell you what I do know. It's because they're visiting the rest of the group that are there are visiting Rachel's tombstone, and the people that are there are Cassie and her family, Marco and his family, I believe. And they're talking about... No, Marco's not there. I think it's just Marco's family, I think. Because they're asking where she thinks Marco is. And they don't know, because this is the point in canon, the canon series, where Jake, Tobias and Marco have gone off with Santarelli, Menderash and Gingerard up into space to find Axe, who has fallen into Kelbridge space. And I love this bit because that's what a lot of my fan fiction work is about, the whole post-war bit with the Kelbridge and all that sort of stuff. So I got a bit of a kick out of that. And Jake thinks, oh, why would I go off into space to do that? And, you know, I've left these people all behind. Why didn't I tell anybody where I was going? And Cassie's obviously told them, but doesn't really know much else. And the parents and everyone else are thinking, well, why didn't he tell us before he left? Why has he only told you? Sob, sob, cry, cry, and all that sort of stuff. So, understandably, they're upset. And Jake's looking at this thinking, what a dick I am. So, in canon, he goes ahead and does this anyway. But for now, let's just look at this story as it is, okay? So, he's gone off with that lot. And we go back to his parents. So, Steve and Jean. And they're in a bit of a mess because they're both saying, we've lost both our kids at the age of 19. What have we done? We're terrible parents. What have we done? What could we have done differently? And Jake, of course, is understandably like, oh shit. I was being a bit of a twazzock in this particular scenario. So this is what the Ghost of Christmas Future shows Jake. And even though in this scenario we still aren't actually told whether Jake is alive or not, everyone around that time is assuming that he's dead, effectively. And Cassie's obviously told them that, because Steve and Jean are talking about, oh, he went into Kelbridge space to look for Axe. And at first I was like, hold on, how do they know that? But then obviously Cassie was told that, and she's gone and told everyone else after Jake has gone. So that's that. So Cassie, so Jake wakes up on Christmas Day and he's suddenly changed. And he decides, actually, yes, Marco, I will come round your house for some cracking Christmas dinner. And he puts on a smiley face and he says to his parents, he comes down the stairs with glee in his stride and says, Dad, I want therapy. And they say, whoop-de-doo. Get in there, Jake. That's actually what happens. Yeah, he basically goes downstairs to his parents and out of nowhere just says, Dad, I want therapy. And they're overjoyed. Oh, I was hoping he would ask. I thought he'd never ask that. It is but let's face it, it's Animorphs. That's as merry as you're going to get, isn't it? I'm talking to Mrs. Elf, by the way. I'm not ignoring you lot. But she's looking at me with doubt in her eyes, and I said that. She's like, oh, yeah, it's Animorphs after all. And that is a merry moment. Acknowledging that you need therapy in Animorphs is the sign of a good time. And it's Christmas after all. It's Christmas. But that was an Animorphs Christmas Carol. That's basically where it ends. It was a good read. I hope you read it as well. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you enjoyed me revisiting this style of talking about books and reviewing them. Obviously, I don't usually do it with a tree in the background, but my whole setup has changed. So you're going to have to freaking deal with it, aren't you? God damn Honda Jazz drivers. Scum of the earth.
I walked by one today. I was so scared.
You walked by a Honda Jazz today?
I was so scared.
Were you really? And just for old time's sakes, everybody, just for old time's sakes, I'm going to throw a book on the floor. Because that's what we all miss, wasn't it? Right, weakness, it's that time again. You get ready, it's coming. It's your Christmas present, lump of coal. And guess where the coal is? It's on the fucking floor. The book on the floor. People miss that. They like that shit. Oh, I'm going to pick up... Oh, Butterfingers.
Everybody loves kittens.
Everybody loves kittens. Yeah, okay. Here's a cat.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mercia. That was the wife's request. So don't blame me for that.
Everybody loves cats.
Everybody loves cats, except even Vista 3.
Yeah.
Even Vista 3 loves cats. So, thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a merry, very merry, very happy, merry, wonderful Merry Christmas. And, yeah, I hope you enjoy this. If you want me to do more fan fiction reads, just freaking tell me. Or else you're not getting any more. Okay? So thank you very much for watching. I shall see you next time. Ta-ra.